Cutting to the three in space, Ben questions where exactly the signal was leading to, as Kevin states that it's a prison planet called Inkarsakon that they'd be heading to, though after questioning why they'd be there, Kevin tells them he's not really sure exactly. Ben then asks Kevin what kind of engine was on this thing so he could figure out about how long it would take to get to a jump gate, though Kevin says he's doubt they'd understand even if he explained it. Hearing this, Ben begins to mess with some controls, pulling up a diagram reminding Kevin that his grandpa Max used to be a plumber, and that he was taught quite a lot about tech from him before checking the engine specs, stating, "Oh cool, it's a Tachyon Class M drive. Given the ship's size, I assume you simply couldn't get anything bigger in there?" Surprising both Gwen and Kevin as they gave him a funny look. Ben then says, "What? I know things," before starting to do some calculations in his head and figuring out that he could. Judging by the thrust output along with the G-infused titanium shell, it should take us about 20 minutes or so to get to the jump gate. Kevin tells Ben that he's impressed with his knowledge on tech, as most humans barely has a grasp on how level 2 tech works. Of course, Gwen then joked, this coming from the guy getting a C in his algebra class at school, though Ben says that this is more important, making her laugh and shake her head, telling him that he isn't living up to his potential in school, though he just shrugs. When they get to the prison planet, Kevin starts to type in a code for identifying clearance, and they are told to proceed to Bave number 4, and they begin to fly closer to the planet. Kevin then tells them that they'd need to go in disguise, as they'd have a problem on their hands if anyone found out humans were there. Gwen questions if the rest of the universe hated humans that much, so Kevin explains that most species actually love humans, going on to add that they're quite the delicacy in some places, making them raise an eyebrow before seeing him getting out some cloaks. The three of them go around with Gwen asking where the guards are, though Kevin tells them that there are none, as they see someone in a cloak bump into them and keep walking. Gwen then looks around to see if they can figure out who the creator is, and then spots squid tendrils coming from a person in a cloak, which she mistakes for Vilgax, and so casts a spell to make the platform under their feet fall and causing them to drop. While this is going on, the person that had bumped into them turned Ben around to face them and began speaking in an alien language before punching him in the face and knocking him down. Ben says, "Not my fault you're here, 6-6. Should have thought about that before you did the crime," as he activates the staff we'd seen him using earlier and spinning it around as the other inmates noticed Ben was human. 6-6 extends a staff of their own and begins to fight with Ben, as we then cut back to Gwen casting another spell that burned away the cloak of the person she'd mistook as Vilgax, revealing that this one was a woman, and Gwen apologized, telling her they'd mistaken them for Vilgax. The woman stands up and demands to know who they were and why they were there, before Ben and 6-6 go flying past them, with the latter having tackled the former, and she sees the Omnitrix on Ben's wrist. Afterwards, she demands to know what the human was doing with the Omnitrix. Questioning how she'd recognized it, the woman states that she should be able to, given the work that went into it, as Gwen then looked at her wide-eyed and asked if she was Azimuth, because they were trying to find the creator of the watch to get it fixed. The woman then states that she could help with that if they got her out of there, and Gwen agreed, calling for Kevin and Ben, stating that they'd found who they were looking for. And Ben takes out the plasma blade, slashing 6-6's jetpack, and Kevin nodded, absorbing the metal on the floor, making it appear like an armor coating around him as they began to fight their way out. Making their way back to the ship, Kevin uncloaks it as the hatch opens up, and the four of them ran inside, with Kevin starting the ship as Ben fought off anyone that tried to get on board, while the thrusters are warming up. Soon though, they began to fly upwards, with Kevin then closing the hatch, and they flew out into space. After they were able to let out a sigh of relief, Ben walks over to the woman and asked her if she could help them fix the watch, which she states that she can help, but she isn't Azimuth, but was his assistant and knows where to find him. Hearing this, Kevin asked why the watch had her DNA signature on it if Azimuth created it, and she stated that it was her way of getting back at him for never appreciating the hard work she'd done to help build it, with the gathering of DNA before he'd created the drones to do so. After Myax officially introduces herself to them, she then goes on to explain that the creator of the Omnitrix was on a planet known as Xenon, which Kevin then then lets out an annoyed sigh stating it just had to be Xenon. Couldn't be some other planet. Gwen asks him why he was upset and questions what exactly is Xenon for that kind of reaction, which Kevin goes on to explain that it's basically a wasteland filled with murderous plants and other unpleasant things. Cutting back to the prison planet, we see the hybrid speaking to 6-6 who'd bartered a passage aboard the ship. The hybrid speaking about their trajectory based on 6-6's information that they'd just given them, and begins to wonder what they'd known that he didn't, with 6-6 saying something and being told to be silent as the hybrid smacked them into a wall. The bounty hunter then takes out all of their blasters at once, pointing them at the hybrid, who warns them that he'd better be certain he wants to do that, making them put their weapons away, as we then cut back to Ben and the crew as the ship rattles and Kevin says that they found Xenon.